Hello, this channel is about engines. In this video, we'll repair the OM422, a naturally aspirated V8 engine with 130 mm pistons. A disassembly video is available on my channel, linked in the description. In this video, I'll be assembling the engine after washing and cleaning everything. I'm replacing the old camshaft bushings with new ones. Alright, one is done. I'm continuing with the assembly. Now I need to install the sleeves. Here I have new KS130 sleeves, piston diameter. So here they are for the 442 engine. I need to unpack the sleeves now. This is how I do it. Before installing them. But now I will check the protrusion of the sleeve above the cylinder head mounting surface. How will I check it? I will make a separate video. It will be linked below in the description. If you're interested, you can watch it. And like this, I check each shell. Now I won't mix them up anymore, each shell. Right now, they don't have any rubber bands yet. Like this. I'll put each shell in for now, then take them out one by one. Put on the rubber bands and insert them back in place. So, I'm using L-ring rubber bands as usual, basically. There's also an adjustment ring in the kit, but it's 0.15 thick. There are even instructions here. The cylinder sleeve height is 9.90, 9.92. The rubber bands, and now what we have here next to them is the sealant. I stopped using the red sealant due to numerous helpful comments and my own realization that it's not very effective. Well, maybe I was just using it out of habit. I used it, but now I'll be assembling everything with this Corteca. I highly recommend it to all. It's slightly pricier, but the quality is far superior. And now I'll explain why I need the sealant. So, especially for those who write in the comments that this is not allowed, it's impossible and so on. So, I don't want to convince anyone that you have to use sealant or not use sealant. Everyone has their own head on their shoulders. Each person should draw their own conclusions. I'm just showing how I do it. So now I'll explain why I'm going to assemble this engine using sealant. Those who watched the video about disassembling this engine probably saw that the sleeve on the 5th cylinder was installed with sealant. I removed all the sleeves, and there was a lot of sealant, specifically on the 5th cylinder. It was in big clumps. I'm not sure if this camera will capture it, but I'll record a close-up on my phone now. Look at this corrosion here. So, right here is an open channel already into the water jacket, right at the spot. Where the sealing rubber sits is very severe corrosion here. If you compare, for example, the 6th cylinder is more or less in decent condition. Well, as usual for an engine from the 90s. But if you look at the 5th cylinder, the corrosion here is very severe, and that's why there are simply no other options here. For this engine, this is simply the only way for it to keep working. After the last repair, it ran 500,000 kilometers, all with the sealant applied right here. Corrosion was present here 500,000 kilometers ago, but it has worsened since then. People applied sealant, and their engine lasted 500,000 kilometers. Although in Germany they would have just thrown this engine away and said, yes, that's it, nothing can be done with it anymore. I degreased everything with solvent, wiping the mounting surfaces and sleeves. I cleaned everything here with solvent. So, well, I applied the sealant like this right into the grooves, then put on the rubber rings. So even if you look from here, you can see that at the top, for example, the rubber ring sticks out just a little, and at the bottom it almost completely sticks out. It's all outside. So there's no sealing here at all. The whole block is worn out here. Alright, so I sealed it like this, especially down here where I put on a bit more. I've coated everything and I'm now installing the sleeve. I apply a special paste on the upper rubber ring to help it going more smoothly. Not sealant, as it's unnecessary. All the rings are installed. Now I'm just installing the sleeve. The sleeves are now in place. Install the remaining sleeves using the same method. That's it, the sleeves are in place. Alright, next I'll be installing the push rods. I've lubricated all the channels. Here are my push rods, and I'll be installing them in this simple way. Next I'm installing the camshaft. I've also lubricated the bushings with oil, and now I'm installing the camshaft using a proven method. Well, the camshaft is in place. It turns like this, everything is great. Next I'm installing the bearings. These are KS bearings, size 0.25. So, the bearings with channels go into the block. The solid bearings without channels are installed in the caps. Next, I'm installing the crankshaft. I clamped the shaft to polish it and remove coolant residue. I also measured the main bearing, a new bearing. It was discovered that during the last shaft grinding the journal wasn't machined. It's also an oversized one, but it was machined. So the bearing wouldn't fit in here, I had to machine it to size. So here's the bearing, it should have a little bit of play. Well, you can check it. You take a 0.15 feeler gauge and it should go in tightly. And that's it, the bearing doesn't move. I separated with the feeler gauge. I fitted the thrust journal. Before installing the crankshaft, I need to install the thrust ring under the oil seal. It needs to be installed hot. For this, I put it on the stove and heat it up. I heat it to about 180, 200 degrees. And then I install it. Better to leave a small gap here because the insert sits very close to this ring, and it's preferable that the insert doesn't rub against this ring. I've grazed the inserts, and now I'm installing the shaft. Alright, the shaft is in place. Now I'm pouring oil, putting on the caps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Alright, the crankshaft is fully tightened. I tightened these main bolts
and I tightened the side bolts. The tightening torques will appear on the screen now. What do we need to check? Here we can see how it spins, so it's perfect. What do we need to check next? We need to check the marks. We see 2 1s and a dot, the timing marks. And what else can we check? We can check the axial movement. I've already shown that I set it to 0.15. So that 0.15 fits in here. The shaft and camshaft are in place. Next I will install the pistons and counterweights. Next, I'll be installing the pistons, so I'm putting in the bearings. These are the bearings I have. MIBA size 0.5. I'm installing the bearings. Now I take the tool and will install the pistons. Alright, I've installed all the pistons, tightened them, and checked to make sure they move freely. Now I must install the counterweights. I disassembled the compressor in the casing, did it for the starter here, threw the bolts here and cleaned them too. Cleaned the threads inside. So now I'm assembling the compressor and I've installed a new bearing. So now I'll briefly show the compressor assembly, since I have a detailed video about assembling the compressor on my channel, so I won't dwell on it too much. I'll just leave a link in the description. If you're interested, you can check it out. So I installed the bearing. Next I'm installing the crankshaft. Watch the continuation in the next episode. I replaced the gear. When disassembling, I immediately noticed the gear's middle washer had fallen apart. So, the gear is different. My gear is tightened, the bearing is tightened. That's it, this is how it spins. Alright, now I'll be installing the cylinder and piston. The piston assembly is new. So, I'm unboxing it. Alright, so I've installed the connecting rod. I've put new bearings in the connecting rod. Now, I'll put on the gasket and install the cylinder. I'm using this sealant for the gasket. All right, that's it. The cylinder is installed and tightened. Everything is tightened. The connecting rod is tightened. Next, I'm installing the head. I washed it, replaced the valves, cleaned off the carbon and assembled it. We run a tap through all the holes because there's a lot of unnecessary stuff in there, like dirt, old sealant, and all sorts of things. This is how much I pulled out of this hole. If you don't remove it, it all turns into a kind of plug. And then you get this situation. It compresses and tears out chunks. So I cleaned this one, that one, but here I don't have any threads. So now I'm gonna drill with an 8.7 and tap a thread for a 10. All right, so I tapped a thread for a 10. I also had to tap one bolt for a 10 on the front cover. I also washed and cleaned everything. So I'll be installing the oil seals, the cover and the front cover. All right, the oil seals are in place. Next, I'll install the cover. I'm installing the cover with an L-ring gasket. It's asbestos free, and I'm applying sealant. Before installing the cover, double check the timing marks. The crankshaft mark and the two camshaft marks are perfectly aligned. With the gaskets on, everything coated, and the bolts ready, let's proceed with the installation. Next, I'm installing the front cover. Next, I'm opening the oil pump to check the gear's condition. Basically, there is some minor wear already. You can see the wear on the cover here and on the gears as well, but it's not critical. So it will still work for a while. The condition is, let's say, about 4 out of 5, still fine. I'm putting it back together. I'm installing the oil pump and the new pressure relief valve. I'm continuing the assembly and installing the oil pump next. Here I've threaded for a 10mm bolt, and here I also had to thread it for a 10mm bolt. I drilled 2 holes in the oil pan and made these bolts so that I have a 15mm head, so the socket can fit between the oil pan and the cover. I washed, blew out and cleaned the oil pan and checked all the welds. It's not leaking, so we'll leave it. I'll now apply sealant and install the oil pan.
Alright, the oil pan is installed and fully tightened. Next, I'm going to install the oil filter.
Next, I'll install the original flywheel that came with this engine. It will be replaced with a new one later on. So for now I'm installing it temporarily so I can mount the fuel pump and later start the engine. Now I'm cleaning the valves. This is how I clean all the valves. Then I'll wipe them down. I sent the cylinder head for grinding on a surface grinding machine. They brought it back to me. This is how it looks now. The grinding quality is very good. Additionally, I cleaned and blew it out from shavings, dust, both from sandpaper and cast iron.
We can see the intake is about 2.5 millimeters, and the exhaust is about 4 or 5 millimeters. So all the cylinder heads are in about the same condition. I've cleaned the valves and this is how they look now. When I was disassembling, I marked each valve. For example, 3 marks means it's from the 3rd cylinder head. What should I do next? Now I'm gonna grind a little, make the working bevel on the valve, and I'll adjust it a bit to fit in place. Also, I want to show you something else. What happened to the springs when I was disassembling. If you watch the video about taking apart this engine, I showed that almost all the springs are broken. I previously mentioned that only 4 or 5 springs in the engine were intact. However, I was mistaken. There isn't a single intact spring in the entire engine. So, if it wasn't broken at the top, then it was broken at the bottom. So that's what happened to the springs. So literally all of them. Some are broken on one side, some are broken on both sides, both the big and the small springs. That's quite something. As long as I've been working, this is the first time I've seen anything like this. Well, my guess is that this happened because the engine started running out of control. Although usually other parts are supposed to suffer in that case. Usually the piston gets welded with the rings. I don't know why the spring is involved. I have no other explanation. So I take the reamers and make the seats a little narrower. I literally narrow this one by 0.5 millimeter, this one by 1 millimeter, maybe 1.5 millimeters. That's it, I leave the exhaust as it is. Now for the intake. Now I take the valves that were originally on this head and I just lap them a little with some paste. Now I take the valve and apply some lapping paste to it. I lubricate the body with oil and lap it. I change the drill's rotation direction.
We can see that a matte strip has appeared along the width of the seat. And where it was shiny, now it's a matte surface. Now I take the exhaust valve in the same way. We can also see a matte track along the width of the seat, and the seat itself all around also has a matte color. So I've left the valves, now I'm assembling the head. First, 2 small washers are placed, then we install the valve stem seal. Before installing the valves, I coat them with a little oil. A washer is also placed under the large spring, and for the exhaust valve I use a red spring. I install the keepers. A plain unpainted spring is installed on the intake valve. That's it, the head is assembled. The head is ready for installation. So, the heads are assembled. I turned the engine over. So, here are my heads. Here I have the bolts and gaskets ready. First, I install the guides into the seats. The guides are in place. And I'm now installing the gaskets. With the heads tightened, the next step is to install the push rods and rocker arm shafts. Next I need to adjust the valves. Brought the first cylinder to top dead center on the compression stroke. Looking through the inspection window, the top dead center will line up with this casting mark. To make it easier for myself, I made a mark with a marker, and the adjustment order is as follows. Now, in this compression position, I'm adjusting all these valves, that is, in order, the first, second, fourth, fifth, and so on. Then I turn it 360 degrees. In the first cylinder I get the purge and I adjust all the remaining valves. Using the first cylinder as an example, I'll quickly show you how to adjust the valves. I loosen the nuts. So I do it as follows. I set the intake valve with a 0.5 gauge, but I make sure it goes through with enough resistance. Use a 0.4 gauge, ensuring it passes through easily. For the exhaust, set it to 0.5. We check the clearance, turn the push rod a little, and check again to make sure the push rod isn't bent. Alright, that's it. The first cylinder is adjusted. Now I'll adjust all the remaining valves the same way. So the valves are adjusted. Now I need to install the pump. But since I don't have it, I'll do the following. I can close the valve covers and not have to come back to them later. When installing the pump, I'll need to check the first cylinder during the compression stroke. I've set the first cylinder to top dead center on the compression stroke. And here, on the camshaft, I just make a mark for myself. Now this is my first cylinder in the compression stroke. So if I turn it 1 revolution now, my camshaft will turn half a revolution. And this mark will go 180 degrees down. So I won't be able to see it. That means by this mark, I'll know that my first cylinder is in the compression stroke. When I have the fuel pump, I'll just set it to 15 degrees and install it. That's it. Now I can close the valve covers. I had the valve covers machined. They were really warped. Leveled the surface, washed and cleaned them as usual. So the injectors arrived. I'm installing the injectors. Everything there has been cleaned. Off. Alright. The injectors are in place. Next I'm immediately installing the return line. Next I'm immediately installing immediately I'm going to install the pump. The first thing I want to point out is that the pump is from a repair. My pump has been repaired. The first thing I want to point out is that the rack moves very tightly, almost like it's sticking. Secondly, there are vice marks and traces from the vice, but that's from last time. You can see a deformation on the tooth. It was already working like that, but you shouldn't do that. There are vice marks, but maybe the fuel guys know better. I won't say anything or act smart, but I want to point out that this happened. I'm installing it. So I'll loosen both lower bolts right away so I can adjust it to the angle I need. I removed the oil channel sealing rubber. Now I'm cleaning everything here and sticking on a new one. I'm installing the sealing ring. Alright, now I need to set the engine in the correct position. As mentioned earlier, I left a mark here. This is my first cylinder at top dead center on the compression stroke. And I also left a mark on the flywheel. This is 15 degrees for me, so I've set it to my mark. And I also look directly at the flywheel and I see that it's set at 15 degrees there. You probably can't see it, of course. That's it. I have the engine set in the right position. I wipe the mounting surface and apply sealant. I've cleaned the bolt holes with a tap. This is a mandatory procedure. Alright. Now we install the pump. So, I've installed the pump. I just set it roughly in the middle and tightened the bolts untightened. I just placed it in the center, and I can see my mark. It almost matches, but I can move it literally half a millimeter in this direction. So I loosen it with 30mm wrench. So all my bolts are loosened and the hub itself moves relative to the gear. When installing the high pressure fuel pump, 3 conditions must be met. 1. The first cylinder must be at top dead center on the compression stroke, not the exhaust stroke. The flywheel must be at the correct number of degrees before top dead center. And 3. It must be on the compression stroke at top dead center. The third condition is aligning the movable and fixed marks on the high pressure fuel pump. Now I need to tighten all four bolts. The pump is installed. So I've tightened those 2 bolts. I turned the engine 360 degrees, so the pump turned 180 degrees. As you can see, the mark is not there, and I'm tightening the other 2 bolts. The pump is fully installed. Now I'm closing the cover. The thread has definitely been tapped. Next, I'm installing the air manifolds. Alright, that's it, the air manifold is installed. Now I'll be installing the fuel lines. That's the end of this part of the video. The assembly is finished, and this is how my engine looks now. This isn't the end. In the next episode, I'll start this engine on the bench. I'll check how it works, check the pressure in Uscle, E. I've already filled it with water. I've already connected the mechanical gauge, E. The batteries are ready, and so on. Tomorrow I'll be working on all of this. So in the next episode, I'll be starting it up and checking everything. I'll probably make a separate episode just for painting it. I'll paint it. First, I'll use primer, then I'll apply the paint. We've already picked out the paint. It's automotive enamel, roughly matching the color. It's a little lighter, I think, but that's okay, because this color isn't exactly black. It's more like gray, a dark gray. That's the video. Thanks for watching. Good luck. Goodbye.